you're so really smart. You're listening to Rule the Galaxy podcast. Me hopes you have a good time. Boom, boom.
Hey, Star Wars fans and Rule the Galaxy fans. It is Joe for another fantastic episode of Rule the Galaxy. Another show where I've given the regular crew the day off. They're off doing volleyball tournaments and work and probably fixing bathrooms if it's DDoC. And I've got two special guests on, two great guys that I've had the pleasure of interacting with over the past 5 years doing this podcast. But as always, follow us on any of your podcast platforms of choice. If you're watching us on YouTube, we really thank you for doing that. Email me with any thoughts, comments, anything that we can do here at Rule the Galaxy. We're hoping to be at Great Ohio Toy Show in just 2 weeks in Xenia, Ohio. So if you're going to that, let me know. And Alfie and I are now trying to look at going to the ICCC in Nashville or Murfreesboro here next in a couple months. So we'll see how that goes. But as we get started, I'm going to go around the room, and I'm going to start with the guy who's furthest away, Mr. Mark Newbold of Fantha Tracks and Making Tracks. How are you, Mark?
I'm very good. Looking forward to getting stuck into some conversation as usual.
We are glad to have you here and glad you could make the time to do it. Our next pal is the Brown leader, Aaron from Hyperspace Heroes. We had the pleasure of meeting at ICCC. We've kept in contact since then. How you doing, Aaron?
Great. Thanks for having me on. And Mark, good to talk to you again.
Yes, been too long.
It has.
You know, I should pay more attention. I was asking them both if they'd met before, and they've done shows together. That's how much Joe pays attention to the Star Wars community right there. But you know what? Mark's such a great guy. Anybody who's got a Star Wars podcast in the U.S., it seems like he will hop on and give them great content. So Mark is he's a great guy in the community, and we appreciate his time here. Guys, we talked about it beforehand a little bit, threw some ideas out there. There's so much going on. At the same time, not as much as we probably all want going on in the Star Wars universe. But I'll start it with the conversation about the Star Wars Celebration in Japan, only because, Mark, you're going to be heading there soon. Let's talk about that, what we're expecting, what's going on. What do you have on your agenda?
Wow, yeah, I think where are we now? It's just about a month, pretty much, give or take, when we fly out. There's how many's going? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There'll be 5 of us coming from the UK, 1 coming from Hawaii, of all places. So there should be about 6 of us there. Hopefully, everybody will bring their shirts so you can find us in the crowd. That's the hope, anyway. Yeah, I mean, I've never been to Japan, so for me, I said to somebody the other day, it's rare. Usually, I'm sure we all get this when you're off on your travels and people go, oh, you're off on holiday. No, it's not a holiday. If I'm doing New York Comic Con, it's a 7-day trip, 4-day show, 1-day travel. You got a day either side when you're probably catching up with people or doing something. It's definitely not a holiday. It's a joy, but it's not a holiday. This one, because we're coming from the UK and it's a longer trip, it's probably the first time I actually sat down with the father-in-law and he said, how's your plans coming together? And I said, yeah, it's coming together. I've got to be honest, this one feels more like a holiday because we've got 5 days to do Tokyo. And then we've got the 3 days of the show and we're doing the virtual cantina thing the night before, which will be fun. And then we've got sort of 3 or 4 days afterwards before we travel back. And the intention is, because I might not get out this way again, if it's another, 17 years since the last one? I'm going to be 71 in 17 years' time. I might not be flying out to do international Star Wars events when I'm 71. Who knows? I mean, Sansweet was doing it, but I'm not Steve Sansweet. So, you never know. This might be the one and only chance to do Tokyo or to do Japan, I should say. So we want to try and catch as much of it as we can. Whereas I'm reasonably confident I'll do New York again, or I'll do Orlando or wherever again. So long answer to a short question, as usual. I'm very much looking forward to it. just catching up with folks and seeing what's going on and anticipating, as I'm sure we'll get into, anticipating any potential reveals that might happen, because they kind of hinted that in the animation panel, and there's always a surprise at Celebration, so should be fun.
No, that we'll hit on that in a minute, but yeah, the animation thing is definitely something I want to hit on there. And you're exactly right. You and I have talked about my trip to Italy. We're going back to Italy this year. We're heading to Australia next year because my wife and I are becoming worldwide adventurers. But when
Nice.
you go to some place like that, you feel like you have to tick the boxes, see and do the big things quick, and get out,
Yeah.
because you never know if you're going to get back again.
Mhm.
And so I can see that for you, because I have no plans to go to Japan ever. But if I was going to go, I'm going to make it worth my time.
Exactly that. I speak as somebody who's been to New York 10 times and I've never been up the Empire State Building. So, what do I know about anything? So I'm the worst person to give advice on travel. But yeah, you're right. It's a one and done probably, unless there's some miraculous change. So yeah, try and get as much in as I can.
Well, we'll get back to you on Celebration in a second. Before we do, Aaron, you're probably not going to this, are you?
No.
But again, Mark, my cousin Matthew Molinaro, he will be there, so make sure you see him. He's with the Indiana Collectors group and doing a panel, so I got to remind myself to tell you that. But Aaron, looking at it, I haven't studied it that much, and I know we'll get some insight from Mark probably. Are you seeing anything besides Ahsoka, Andor? What else am I missing? Maybe Rey movie stuff. I don't know. That's going to be announced that you're seeing or you want to see.
I'm looking forward to if they're going to show anything in regards to season or volume 3 of Visions.
Yep.
Because they're going for volume 3, they went back to all Japanese animation houses, and we actually talked with Justin Leach, who is, so his company is like the go-between between Lucasfilm and the Japanese animation houses, and he had a big role in volume 1. And there's like 4 of the studios that did animation for volume 1 coming back for volume 3.
Okay.
So I'm excited about that.
I did like volume 1 better than volume 2. I don't know about you guys. I thought volume 1 fit me more, I guess, than volume 2. Volume 2 was fine. I just like some of the things I saw there. Mark, do you have a comment on that one?
Yeah, I'd say I did enjoy season 2. I thought there was some cool stuff in it, but the one that tickled me, it's this total Brit thing, was the Aardman episode, I Am Your Mother. That just made me smile so much. And also some of the people who did the voices are like very unique to the UK sort of television market. Maxine, what was her name now? Maxine Peake, who nobody in America will know Maxine Peake, but over here she's been in loads of stuff. So it was kind of cool to hear her and see that. So yeah, and Dennis Lawson played Wedge, so
Right.
that was awesome. So.
Gotcha. Mark, outside of the things we just brought up, do you see or think there's other things that might be discussed that we're not hitting on? Are they holding anything back, or do you think they want to promote those things and focus on that? I mean, because a Rey movie is coming out, or I'm sorry, Mando and Grogu. I said Rey earlier. Mando and Grogu is coming out in 2026. They'll focus on that. Ahsoka, Andor. Outside of those things and Visions, do you see other things they're going to talk about, or you want to see them talk about?
I mean, like you say, we mentioned animation, so hopefully there's more coming from that. I am surprised, very surprised actually, that right now, especially now being this sort of end of the year, I'm expecting more celebration of Force Awakens 10th at the end of the year. That feels more like a San Diego, New York Comic Con era thing. I don't think there's a D23 this year. I might be mistaken. I don't think there is. But this end of the year, being nearer sort of May, I really thought there'd be more sort of Revenge of the Sith 20th stuff. And it doesn't feel like they're putting much of a focus on those. But in terms of new stuff, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a bit early for Rey. It's a bit early for the Sean Levy stuff, which Kathleen Kennedy was kind of alluding to the other week when she, gave very, very firmly put the record straight on her, immediate future. Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping for surprises, of course, but I think they're going to stick to Mando and Grogu as the focus, and say Andor starts shooting, I think 5th of May here in the UK next, which is 2 months away. So I would imagine there'll be that'll be the focus, which is probably right.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So a couple things that I want to see. I definitely, at the end of every celebration, they usually say, "Hey, congratulations! It's like the Olympics. Here's where we're going
That's
next," right?
good. Yeah.
I am, and you and I have discussed it because we haven't met face to face yet. I'm hoping, selfishly, it's in the United States in 2027 for the
Yeah.
50th anniversary. If it's LA, Anaheim, it's a little bit of a haul for me. If it's in Orlando, it's a little bit easier, but I have to go to that. And obviously, unless we meet before then, that's when we'll officially meet up face to face.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping that it's a US one. I think it would do best, and I think they should blow it out. I think it should be a much bigger venue, more crowds to allow that celebration kind of to happen. The other thing, and you mentioned the animation, and we talked about a few of those different topics we know we're going to see. I think Star Wars is made so much better by things like Clone Wars and Rebels. And I think while there's parts of the sequels I like, and I absolutely love The Force Awakens, I think the sequels could be made so much better if they made a quality item like Rebels or Clone Wars related to those.
Yeah.
I also selfishly, even though everybody's getting a little tired of clones, I could really see a show of Rex, Cody, Echo, Wolf, Gregor that transcends from Rebels to
Yeah.
when we possibly see Rex in Return of the Jedi, for example.
That's so weird you say that. Long story short, I went to a gig last night. A man called Ash played. We're friends with the bass player. Ash played the the Phantom Menace rap party. They've got lots of connections to Star Wars. And I'm friends with the bass player. He's a big Star Wars guy, Mark. And we got into a conversation, and it was like, "What would you like to see next?" And just in amongst there was four of us conversing, and that came up. It's like, well, I'd love to see more from the Bad Batch, but that kind of feels like that's sort of done its bit because you kind of know that they go and have their happy ending, if you like. But Rex, we need to know what happens to Rex. We need to know about the clone uprising and all these things that never got picked up on that they could really, and they've got all the assets. That was always a thing back in the Clone Wars day, wasn't it? Dave Filoni saying about the assets. They're all built. So let's do something with that because, like you say, I think you can really, I think with live action, because of the expenditure and you're bringing in household names to animation generally, because you want to get it out there and it's another thing to push. That's why Ryan Gosling's being courted, I'm sure, for the Sean Levy thing. So it's a household name as near as you're going to get these days. But in animation, you can, excuse me, you can kind of go out into the weeds a little bit because the fandom is more focused on the fandom, and we want that sort of deep dive stuff. And then three guys like us could come together on a podcast, and one of us might be very aware of one of the little nooks and crannies, but two of us might be like, yeah, that rings a bell, and then the conversation starts. That's what you want. Mm-hmm. So I think for animation, I think that's where the real meat on the bone should be. I'm amazed. I was going to say gobsmacked. I'm amazed that we haven't had way more animation, and that's where I'm hopeful at Celebration that other things get announced because, excuse me, that feels like the place to do it. It really does.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, how about you?
Yeah, I think I agree. With the cost of live action skyrocketing and with the recent shows and streaming services kind of struggling, I think animation is definitely their best bang for the buck. Plus, you can keep tighter wraps under the story and leaks, and there's no set photos coming out. And I think there's definitely a story that you can tell between Bad Batch and Clone or Rebels with Rex and Wolf and Gregor coming together. Yeah. How did they end up on that? You can even weave Filoni's beloved Ahsoka in and out of that story. You know what I mean? And but then another story of how he joined the rebellion after post Rebels. Give me more Rex. I'm always up for more Rex. He's my favorite clone by all means. Right? Yep. And you can't give me enough Rex, honestly. But I think animation, and I'd love to see a surprise announcement. It's close enough. Celebration is close enough to May the 4th. I'd like to see them. What's going to be the new Tales of? Last year they snuck up and dropped that Tales of the Empire on us out of nowhere, and it was phenomenal. And so I'd love to see them do that announcement at Celebration. And, again, our jaws drop like Tales of, I don't know, bounty hunters or smugglers or something obscure, take those characters, those sideline characters and, or maybe it's Tales of the Rebellion, and it's a story about Anto Krieger or Saw Gerrera, and to tie in with Andor season 2.
I would wholeheartedly. I mean, there's ones that we read growing up: Tales of the Empire, Tales of Jabba's Palace, Tales of the Cantina. You could do those, and people would eat them up completely.
They
But
would.
you hit on that one there, and I really like it because I'm a big believer that Luthen is one of the best Disney Star Wars characters that's been created. There's so much, and I know we're going to talk about Andor, and I know they said there's going to be some background in season 2 and everything, but that's such fertile ground for that character and others like you mentioned that could be in there that I would be perfectly happy with. So I I sometimes sit there and think, and one of my recent guests was like, I know Disney has the money and I know they have the people. Sometimes they make decisions where you're like, you could have gone this other way. And there's so many people would be like, yep, sign me up. I'm in. Here's my money. Just take it. Right.
Mhm.
And sometimes they jump and they go the other direction and you just question and go, why? Why don't you just take the easy money and the easy road of path in front of you? So I think these are all easy paths.
Yeah. There is like a risk aversion, I think, sometimes, and also Disney being beholden to this, the shareholders, the stockholders, in a way that Lucasfilm wasn't. You only had to please George. Clone Wars was a total passion project for George, and if he wanted to spend $2 million on an episode, that's what we did. So it's a different world in that sense. But by the same token, yeah, you sometimes think. I mean, Star Wars. It's easy for us to say it as fans because we're. I've been saying this phrase a lot lately. We're inside the bubble, aren't we? So we kind of know what we want, and we sort of know what each other wants. And even though, if you've got three people like us, one might be more focused towards the Empire side, one might be more of a Underworld person, one might be more of a Jedi person, whatever that might be. There's always the overlaps. So we kind of know what we're looking for. So whilst it's probably a weird analogy. Whilst Lucasfilm would probably very much appreciate what we want, Disney as a broader envelope would sort of go, yeah, but we've got to appeal to the 9 out of 10 people that don't know what species Nubs is or whatever it might be, So you've got to strike that balance between the two. But then there's a little part of me sits here and thinks, okay, Top Gun Maverick was a $1.6 billion film that made multiple times more than the original did, and people love the original. Why aren't we making an X-Wing Rogue Squadron TV series? Because we know there's an appetite for that sort of thing. And it's X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, which any kid who had a computer in the 90s knows was like the coolest thing ever. That feels like an easy win. The characters are all out there. The scenarios that you could build a plot line, a season-long plot line is right there. That feels like one of those easy win moments. That's just one example. So I'm sure we could sit here for the next 45 minutes and spitball a dozen great concepts. So there is a frustration when they don't, and they do throw, like Kathleen, that what was it, 4 or 5 years ago now, and she goes, here's a wall of stuff we'd like to do, and I think we're so used to, for example, and it's weird because Underworld's been back in the news because that's a sick. Underworld comes in as a topic of conversation like flares come in every 10 years, so we're here talking about Underworld again, and rip that. I think we posted on Fantha a couple of days ago, and there was an interview that Star Wars 100 Interviews did with Rick McCullum that had never been aired. And there's McCullum going, oh, we finished Sith, and then we booked the stages in Sydney to do Underworld, and all these new bits of information coming out. That's really one of the few George era examples that you can go, it was there to do, and it didn't happen. Whereas Disney have got to keep enticing, exciting the shareholders by going, we might do a series called Droid Tales, or we might do a Lando Calrissian film. And it's like, oh, I want to buy into that. So it's a different build, a different scenario. We've got 13 years this year since Lucasfilm got sold to Disney. And we still think of it as the new era. It really isn't. It really isn't, Yeah. A lot of headspace changing going on with us.
Yeah. There's two things. So Joe used the word path a couple times, and there's a whole nother storyline there of the path that they dropped hints at in Obi-Wan Kenobi. In Kenobi, where you could do and you could do it animated. I mean, again, I think that's where their bread and butter is right now. And you could do an Asajj and
Quinlan Voss.
Quinlan Voss interacting with the path. and I think that blow the doors off of. You get the right story writers in there, and I think that right there would blow the doors off. It would probably rival Bad Batch, right, in terms of the quality. The other thing is, they could pick up New Rangers of the Republic and use the Adelphi Rangers as the base of it. You could develop a whole series based on that, where it's kind of a little bit Rogue Squadron, a little bit New Rangers of the Old Republic. Make it kind of fun, slightly campy, like season 1 of Mando. And you can work Mando and Grogu, because you can have them come in for special missions, and build it around Carson Teva's character, make him the whatchamacallit from the Marvel universe, Nick Fury of the Star Wars universe, right? And make him the mission leader, sending the crews out, and you can introduce new characters, you can bring in pre-existing characters, mix and match them all throughout, and have a fun series utilizing some of the strengths that they've built up over the last few years.
Yeah.
I think right now, I feel like Lucasfilm, if you're listening, we have a story group right here.
They're always listening. They're always listening.
We're volunteering. The three of us. You've got a guy in Michigan, a guy in Indiana, and a guy in the UK. I think we could hash out quite a bit over the next 20 years. Yeah. So even though we're the older crew, we could definitely do that.
And don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to the Rey movie. I want to see it developed. Sure. I want to see future stories outside of the Skywalker saga. They were good characters. It was just they were what they were, and let's let them stand on their own 2 feet. Rey and Finn and Poe and let them have their own new adventures with new bad guys and villains and trials and tribulations and get it developed, but quit messing around with the story. Let's do something.
Yeah. But doesn't it feel like, you've got the Mandoverse as a thing that Favreau and Filoni have got, and there's no, they're completely controlling that era. There's no spin-off comics. There's no spin-off books. I mean, Adam Christopher got halfway through writing a Mando book and they kiboshed it. I think Pablo Hidalgo had done a Mando, like a DK guide, and that got stopped. So they've got complete control over that, and that's an era. And then you've got the sequel trilogy era, which is another thing. And then the Rey stuff's going to be probably 15 years beyond that. Don't you think, though, in the same way that you had the prequel trilogy, and George kind of, because he didn't know he was going to do all this stuff in between, that it was going to happen. So he's leaving these beautiful breadcrumbs from the end of Sith to the start of A New Hope. And then we've had all the stuff, Bad Batch, Solo, Rebels, Andor, Kenobi, all the stuff that's sat in the middle that's been so interesting. I sometimes think that you can almost look at the Mandoverse era, and I know it's still expanding, almost like you'd look at a trilogy, and then there's gaps between that and the next big thing, which is the sequel trilogy. Those areas between feel, to me, riper than being in the trilogy, and like you just said, get that Rey thing going, because that will give us more information about, the First Order, how that built. It still feels very, and I know there's stuff out there I've not read. I certainly can't keep it on top of everything, but it still feels like the First Order build feels so lightly sketched, whereas now we're looking at the Empire build, and you can go to something like Bad Batch for background information on that. So there's so much fertile ground if they want to dive into it.
Well, you talked about the build, and for a lot of us, that meaty part of the story right now is that between the prequels and the original trilogy, and that's where they've really put a lot of stuff together. I know we've discussed this briefly before, but I did finish Star Wars Mask of Fear, Reign of the Empire. And the amount of building, even in that first book, I don't know if either one of you have read it yet or not.
Not yet. It's on the pile.
But it is, just to give you a preview, you can see that, and they didn't even bring Palpatine into this book, right? It was all Mothma, Saw Gerrera, Bail Organa, things like that. But you can see the behind-the-scenes stuff of how the Emperor, before he was the Emperor, when he was still Chancellor Palpatine, was building the Empire on the back end before anybody knew it. And it was, when they flipped that switch and he took over, it was already out there established, ready to go. Just like those prisons in Andor and things like that. They already had that planned out way before he flipped the switch and said, "Up, New Galactic Empire," and it's really in there. So you're talking about the building side of things. If we can still build something like that between those first two trilogies, the fertile ground to show the transition from Return of the Jedi all the way until Force Awakens is, I mean, it's years worth of stuff they could fill.
And like Aaron says, that's where animation plays completely to Lucasfilm's strengths. And I don't see why, when you get something like Bad Batch, where the animation now, I mean, we know how brilliant D. Bradley Baker is, but the animation was so nuanced. There's no reason why you couldn't get real, like we are so lucky to have Tony Gilroy. You know, I don't know of anybody else who could write something like Andor. I don't know if I said this today, and as I said it, it sounded like an insult. I don't know if it is. I don't know if a show like Andor is within Filoni's wheelhouse. But then a show like Andor is not a show that Filoni would do, so it's an unfair comparison. Yeah. But then you get something like a Bad Batch, and then you take the performances and the animation and the phenomenal Kevin Kiner, or the Kiner family music, and transpose that to the next era. Maybe, I mean, Genevieve O'Reilly in that live stream with Tony Gilroy the other day got quite choked up by saying, "I'm going to really miss this character." And whilst I'm watching it, I'm thinking, come on, you're going to be in Andor season 2. You're going to be, you know, it's going to, or rather Ahsoka season 2, I should say, Ahsoka season 2. You know, because we saw her in season 1. And it feels like there's a future for Mon Mothma on the screen. But then when you actually break it down, I think what she's, excuse me, more alluding to is, I don't think I'll ever get that deep into the psyche of Mon Mothma again. I'll appear as Mon Mothma. I'll have moments. I'll make proclamations, but you won't learn the reasoning behind it. You know, she might turn up and voice. I mean, didn't she voice Mon in Rebels as well? If I remember, she was the voice of Mon Mothma in Rebels.
And she was standing on the ship with the Rebels making the announcement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the Gorman Massacre Lincoln thing, wasn't it? If I remember. Mm-hmm. So there's moments like that she could certainly return as Mon Mothma, but I don't think she'll ever get as deep into the character again. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But there's definitely the potential for animation now that just keeps improving in technique and everything. To get some really heavy writers in and go, you got 20 episodes of animation. You haven't just got 12 episodes of a live action season. You got 20 episodes to really get into this if you want to, and go at it. Because Star Wars fans like us, for example, the three of us, are hungry for stuff like that. So just treat it like a live action show and just get into it. Because the animation can cope with it and the performances certainly can cope with it.
Agreed. Aaron, anything to follow up on that? Are we good? You want to?
Yeah, no, I think he nailed it. He nailed it exactly. And we've got great storytellers in. I mean, we've had really good examples this last year of Star Wars storytelling done well, and in different styles. You've got Bad Batch coming from you know, Filoni's wheelhouse. You've got Tony Gilroy's with Andor, and you've got Christopher Ford and I'm blanking on the other name now. Yeah, with Skeleton Crew, which is a different style of storytelling, which just was a banger in its own, you know, in its own sphere, in its own wheelhouse. It was such a great way, you know, and it's not Andor, it's not Bad Batch. It was its own thing, but it was still it was fun. It brought the fun back, you know. But then you can have a little dose of seriousness with Tony Gilroy, you know, or you can have a little dose of the passion with Bad Batch, you know, the passion of the storytelling, and it all gels well. I mean, they've got some great tools in their toolbox now that they should utilize.
And you mentioned, Mark, that you don't have to follow that Skywalker path, correct? And you look at something like Skeleton Crew, which you and I spoke about right when it was ending. And you know, I think we were one episode left before when we had our last talk. And I look at that and I say, that was fun Star Wars that didn't have to follow along with that Skywalker line. It just was a good story with good characters that was fun, adventure. And there is plenty of room for something like that in there, just like there's plenty of room for things like Andor, which is more gritty and more dark and more serious, that it can feed all the different voices and all the different flavors that are out there that people want, right? You don't have to make it all the same thing.
Oh, totally. And I think sometimes the misread of the Skywalker era or the Skywalker saga, I think sometimes people think it has to. What we see on screen in the Skywalker movies and the 9 movies, obviously the 3 trilogies, I think people think that it's got to include the characters. It doesn't need to include the characters. It needs to include the ramifications of what the characters did. So you can reference the Battle of Hoth without seeing Luke in the Battle of Hoth, or you can mention the Battle of Endor without seeing Han blow up the bunker. It's the events. So I think in the same way season 7 of Clone Wars had the Maul Ahsoka fight happening kind of when the other the Battle of the Heroes was happening. You didn't need to see the 2 things concurrently to know that what's at stake. You're at a moment of time, and I think you can take those events and have other characters, because there's Han, Luke, and Leia. We know they're the top of the tree in terms of the rebellion, for example, and that Vader and the Emperor are the top of the tree in terms of the Empire. But there's other people. There's millions of people involved in these battles, billions, trillions across the galaxy. So you just need to reference the moments in the same way that you had that episode of Mando when, I can't remember what season it was. I can't remember, but you saw that hologram with the Death Star blowing up, and they, you knew the galaxy was watching because you saw the celebrations at the end of the films. It was that kind of vibe and tone that this is a moment, but you don't necessarily need to hear Leia make a speech about it. So I think they could play that in a different way if they wanted to.
Right on.
I like it. Before we hop into Andor, because I did a rewatch of Andor season 2. I did a rewatch recently of Andor season 1. And Mark, one of our last conversations was it was a show that you had to work yourself into. Those first 2 or 3 episodes, I was like, am I going to like this? Am I not? But being able to watch it back to back to back and see the growth of every character in the show, and then see the meaning of it at the end, made it so much better this time. I really walked away from that saying, I can't wait to see season 2 and how they're going to up the ante and make it quicker. What did George always say? Make it
faster, more intense.
Faster, more intense. That's what I'm looking forward to in Andor season 2. I feel like we're going that direction. But one thing I want you guys to think about as we go into Andor season 2, and it struck me as I watched the rewatch. I've always said that I've enjoyed the sequel trilogies to a certain point, and there are things I really liked, and there was a few things that I didn't like as much. But one of the things that I felt like it didn't do was, or that it did and I didn't want it to do, was I felt like it took away the ramifications of the first 6 movies and the ramping up of that battle. And when you leave Return of the Jedi, you feel like this all had meaning. And then you watch Rebels and you watch Rogue One and you watch this Andor and you're going, this had meaning, right? Taking down this empire by these rebels and all these people that were involved and put their lives on the line had meaning. And sometimes I watch the sequels and I go, well, they just did Rebels versus Empire like part 2, right? And it was okay. It was different, but it made me feel like it took away some of the value of it. And it really stood out when I watched the last 2 episodes of Andor and I saw what that buildup was at the end, and those people willing to give anything to just battle those people that were putting their boots down on their neck. So sorry I went on a long diatribe there, but that's where I got out of rewatching Andor 1, and I'm excited about watching season 2. Where are you guys after the trailer and the sizzle reel and all that stuff came out? Where are you guys on the Andor season 2? And feel free to knock me down and say I'm wrong on that thought of mine.
No, actually, I think I'd like to play off that thought a little bit, which is, I think one of the things that we've picked up that we're going to get in this season is we're going to get more of that Rebel Alliance formation and the differences in the factions. And I think Saw is probably going to have, I would not be surprised if Saw actually is an adjutant in the Gorman massacre. And from a storytelling standpoint, that would be phenomenal, and it would give it just plays right back to your point, Joe, which is giving so much more depth and meaning to Return of the Jedi and the finale of the Empire and all the the unpleasant things that you have to do in warfare sometimes, to lead up to the final ending. And if anything, and if that kind of thing happens, it's just going to further that feeling, right? In terms of what you were just describing.
Yeah, it feels like there's going to be a lot of grey. I know this is a phrase Star Wars fans don't seem to like sometimes. I think there's going to be a lot of grey in season 2 of Andor, and I think there's going to be adjutant's a great word. It wouldn't surprise me one iota if, and it would be some. It feels like it would be somebody more militant like Saw Gerrera that would kind of start a riot, start a stampede, start something, give the Empire a reason to actually make the first move for the optics of the fact that it's the Empire that made the first move. That sort of vibe. And yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see a lot more of the formation of the Rebel Alliance, formalising of it. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if there were scenes where you possibly see the Ghost Crew or possibly see other, aspects of that era, because we're in that sort of wheelhouse very much now. But yeah, I think it's going to get dark before we get to the end of the season. But going back to your point about season 1 of Andor, I think really I did a rewatch about 6 months ago, and I can't say, I mean, it's my favourite single episode of Star Wars television, Rick's Road, the end of season 1 Andor. But so I can't say I enjoyed it because it's quite a harrowing episode.
Yeah.
But having watched the season before a couple of times and left it alone for a couple of years and then come back and watched it again in advance of season 2 coming, the importance and the heft of everything, seeing what Marva did when she rescues Cassian from his homeworld and taking him to where she did, just all these little elements, what happened to his dad, just moments that just chip away at the underpinnings of everybody, to the point where they're ready to start smashing stormtroopers' heads in with those bricks because they've got no other choice. There's no option. It's that moment of rebellion. And I love the fact that, to me, I know everyone talks about Luthen's speech to Lonnie in the corridor, which is phenomenal. But I kind of grew up on Babylon 5, where Sheridan and Sinclair would give big speeches every episode. So I love that moment. But the moment that really sung to me was Marva's speech, because she knows that it's going to be said at her funeral. And this is her eulogy. She's giving her own eulogy. And she's saying all the things that she's kind of bottled up, but she couldn't be the one that took it forward. But maybe Cassian could, or maybe somebody else could. And she's speaking to Ferrix, but she's not just speaking to Ferrix. She's speaking to the whole galaxy. That, for me, is the single best speech in all of Star Wars. It really, really is. So when you see it again after watching the whole season, and I think this is where season 2 is going to be so, I mean, what a high bar to have to meet. I don't envy them having to match what happened in that episode. But to think of something like the Gorman Massacre, I think they've said the Gorman Massacre takes place over like 5 episodes or something. I think that's out there. Not just go, fight, but just the ramifications of that is so enticing to me as a fan to want to know these things, to know I'm going to watch it and actually probably be sitting on the edge of my seat whilst I'm watching it. And that's a few weeks away. I mean, and I don't know who to blame or thank for the fact that we're getting 3 episodes a week, because that's going to be a nightmare for all of us to try and cover, isn't it? But I'm up for the challenge. I'm sure you guys are up for the challenge. As a fandom, we're up for the challenge.
I think Gilroy, one of our guys said, Gilroy even said, this is going to be a real hard one for the podcasters.
Yeah. Bless him.
I almost wish they would, Disney would, if they wanted to throw each week's 3 episodes in the movie theaters, I would totally go. I would go pay and, on a Saturday morning or something and go watch all 3 episodes.
What a dream that would be.
In the theater on a weekly basis for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm totally down with that.
1,000,000%.
There's probably 10,000 Star Wars podcasts out there, and I can guarantee you pretty much all of them to a person would say, sign me up. Saturday morning, let me take my snacks in, and let's go watch these 3 back to back to back. That would be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. And I will say the other thing that I got out of season 1 that I didn't pay as much attention to that I should have, but I think it's Nimic, the young man who dies in this, like at the end of the heist. When they were reading through his diary,
manifesto,
manifesto, it was fantastic stuff. I mean, it was really great. And you think it's just, when he's first on there, he's kind of babbling about it and just kind of whatever. But when Andor is playing that back and he's listening to it in the ship, and when he's, it really had meaning to it. It really had some depth to that speech or that manifesto that he put together. So another one of those little guys who he was bought in, right? They kept saying he's all in, no matter what. He's bought into it. But it takes people like that to make something happen. It really does. So
Yeah,
not enough credit goes to him probably.
I did a rewatch a few weeks ago, and that moment when Andor's re-listening to it, yeah, it definitely hit harder this time than the initial watch through.
And you would never give, not that Cassian's uneducated or any of that, but when you see him at the start on Molana and he coldly shoots that guard, he's got the killer. He's the lethal James Bond type assassin character. You don't know that there could be the capacity for that depth. Even when you think forward to Rogue One, when he makes a decision not to take out Galen Erso, for example. I mean, that goes south for Galen anyway. He dies anyway, but not by Cassian's hand. And it sets up a bit of dramatic conflict with Jin and as we know. But to think of that speech, that little notebook essentially with all these thought processes that Cassian's probably sat there on his bunk sort of going through it and letting it absorb, that he's probably going to end the season 2. I don't know where Luthen will be at the end of season 2. I think everyone's assumption is that people you don't see in Rogue One are going to die. No, it's a galaxy with hundreds of thousands of stars. He could just fly off somewhere else. There's no reason for him to die. But dramatically, from a TV point of view, he probably will. Good death scene and all that gets you an Emmy. But I think that Cassian will probably be able to pretty much level up with Luthen by the end of it in terms of why are we doing this and why is all this on the line and what am I prepared to give for this? We know what Luthen's prepared to give. I know there's a sunset I'll never see, that whole speech. That's fine. That's Moses not getting to the promised land sort of thing. We see the parallel for him. But where are we with Cassian? So I think that manifesto, as you say, could become even more important in season 2.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're not going to go a real long show today, so there's a couple other things that I wanted to hit on. I know we've hit some pretty hefty topics so far. I really like it. One, a little bit more relaxed. I know you recently interviewed Anthony Daniels, which, God bless you, that's the one guy that across this whole thing that I want to interview because he's seen everything and been a part of everything. And I love his book. It's one of my favorite books with him doing the audio of it. But Anthony Daniels, I guess he recently came out and said his favorite film was The Rise of Skywalker. And I say let's give him kudos because that was a movie where he did bring some extra things to the table, right? It was him getting to probably act and be more involved after being put a little bit back on the shelf for a while. So, I mean, it was really cool to see. I don't know how much involvement he'll have in the future. I know he was in Ahsoka briefly, right? His voice. I don't know if he was in the bucket or not, but yeah, I mean, I thought that was pretty cool that he came out and said that, and people were like, "Well, of course it is. He got to talk a lot." Well, yeah, he played a key role in most of the movies, but this one he hit it out of the park. And I'm glad that he got to have that as kind of one of the final things.
Yeah, it made sense. As a legacy character, as they now refer to people like Chewie and R2-3PO and Akbar and Nien and characters like that. And for it to be number 9 and the last one as it was, I'm sure it's not the last one, but as it was, and he did, as you say, have some great little moments in it. 3PO has always been a supporting character, and he's a supporting character in 9, but there was just enough focus on him, in the prequels especially. He was, he's there. There's no, it's 3PO and R2. They've got to be a part of it, but they are far less integral. And even in Force Awakens, BB-8's the new R2. The focus is on him, and getting to 9 and giving him a little bit more of a moment was cool. And also, I think for Anthony, just from a practical point of view, you go from basically walking around in a suit made of tuna cans, which looks amazing, but you can't move and there's no, it's a killer. To get to 9, where he said the suit was so easy. I mean, this is him saying easy. We'd die in it, but for him it was comparatively easy. Also, must have been so nice, and they do, I don't say make a fuss of him. That's not the right phrase, but they give him within the realms of the Star Wars world. They give him all the respect that he has earned, more than earned. So I think he appreciates that as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was glad that he got to come out and talk about that. Another topic that is near and dear to my heart. We're going completely in different directions here. Since Disney's takeover of Star Wars or Lucasfilm, we've gotten 2 Black Series Mara Jade characters, I believe. We now have the Mara Jade lightsaber set coming to the Disney parks. Do you guys see, and somebody I was talking to yesterday said there's just no way to shoehorn that in, but they're putting enough, as you mentioned earlier, breadcrumbs out there. There's got to be something, or are they just saying, hey, we know people will buy these items, we're going to make them, and really we don't have any other plans. But gosh, it just seems like that's just fertile ground with a character like that since 1991 has been very well loved. Any thoughts from you guys at all? Just hypotheticals on Mara Jade?
I'll let Aaron go first because I've always got thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, right? I mean, we've got no real information on upcoming series, things going on, and it's, but and what did they release that Heir to the Empire, action figure set, and it's a good question. I mean, it's obviously time will tell, but it's also a dangerous thing, right? Because she is so beloved. If you work her into canon in any other role than what she was in the EU, you're going to enrage half the fandom instantly. Personally, I wouldn't mind. I mean, work her in, and if they work her in as a slightly different kind of character in a different time period or I'm fine. It's all good, right? Because they're bringing her in. Thrawn is not exactly like he was in Heir of the Empire, but I'm still happy with the Thrawn that we have in canon. And so I bring her in. I'm ready for it. By all means, they just better be ready. Have their DMs closed when they bring her out for a while, because they'll hear it. No matter what they do, they'll hear it.
Yeah,
that's very true. I agree. I think they're in a nice place, weirdly, because there's enough of a hunger for Legends stuff, like the Essential Legends collection re-releases, and there's enough of a hunger for that. And Hasbro, as you just mentioned, brought that Heir to the Empire set out, and over the years there's been bits and bobs. So I think there's enough of an interest and a hunger in the Legends stuff, just as its own thing, that they can justify doing this. But by the same token, I agree. I'd like to see Mara come back. She won't come back as Luke's wife or any of that, even though there's chunks of time where if they wanted to, they could. Things happen. You don't have to always refer to your past. I'll give you a really weird real life example. I've been married for 15 years, but I was married before. I don't talk about my ex-wife all the time, so it's not a topic that comes up. So there's no reason for Luke to mention his. So, so they could do that if they wanted to. But by the same token, by bringing Mara Jade in, they could bring look, Thrawn's a great example because he's in a totally different time period when he came in Rebels, where we saw him 6 years after Jedi, but it's the same guy essentially. And, Zahn did all the work and made it work. But they could do that with Mara. She could come in as, if they wanted to, maybe not Talon Card because he's not a canon character, but, a character of that ilk, or come in as the Emperor's Hand, or maybe they canonize her being in Jabba's court, or whatever they want to do. There's avenues in for a Mara Jade character, and I would hope that they kind of stick to the archetype, good-looking redhead kind of thing, and just get a character in there that's unashamedly Mara Jade, because we remember the 90s. It was Boba Fett, Darth Vader, Mara Jade. They were the 3 top characters of the 90s. And anyone born after the 90s I couldn't conceive of that when they just hear of this character called Mara Jade and look at the most basic sketching of what she was. It's like, wow, there's way more to the character, way more to that character than just that. So I think they've got options.
Well, and she was for the most part, I mean, they shoehorned her back into some things prior to the original trilogy and during the original trilogy, but she was a post-original trilogy character, right, in the
Yeah.
EU. But I think if you look at the mixture of how popular the Lost Stars book was and how they kept doing the scenes from the original trilogy from a different point of view and what was going on in different parts of the universe, they could easily retrofit her in that way in a book or something like that. And then you talked about the fertile ground being animation. I threw out that idea of give me Luke post Return of the Jedi, pre sequel trilogy, while training Kylo Ren, whatever,
Yeah.
or Ben Solo. There is a way to fit that in because you think about it. Some of the most revered characters that we talk about right now, Captain Rex, Ahsoka, things like that, were completely animation for the most part until this tail end where they brought Ahsoka to live action, right? I mean, it's for the most part been animation, and they're as well loved as some of the characters that were in the original trilogy.
Mhm.
So there is a way, and you're exactly right. They're probably weighing their options and saying, how much do we want to dust this up? How much do we want to get
Yeah.
the anger and the hatred going, or do we have to follow it exactly like it? Because they got a little bit back on Thrawn, right? I mean, it wasn't people were like that's not my Thrawn, whatever. But I think most people are like, hey, I'm just happy to have Thrawn involved.
Yeah.
So I don't know. When I saw that, as soon as I saw it, I just wrote down Mara Jade lightsaber set. Where
Right.
is this going? Right? You're
Well,
like, yeah,
they could, and they could, if they wanted to introduce her on the screen, they could bring her in as a new character in Ahsoka season 2, and that would give her the relationship with Thrawn. And then you can do spin-offs in books with her and Luke having adventures, or comics,
Yeah.
or even animation, like you said, Joe, and do a series of their adventures later on or something. And that probably might be the best avenue in terms of some of the fandom being okay with it, because at least then you still have a connection between her, Thrawn, Luke, and but still have her on screen.
And it all adds to Luke's sorrow, doesn't it? When he
yes.
does the whole disappear to Acto thing, it's not just about the Jedi; it's also about him. Because Star Wars, the more Star Wars we get, the more things overlap, the more books, comics, and animation we get, the more it becomes a soap opera.
Well,
It's a kitchen sink drama to a degree, isn't it? It's people's personal relationships and all that stuff. So it only layers into that.
and there is a fan theory out there that when he's on Octo, and he's standing there, it looks like there's kind of a grave right there and in the scene, and a lot of people have thrown out the theory that maybe that's Mara Jade's grave.
Yeah.
And that would fit right with what you said.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just do it, Lucasfilm.
I mean, look, I've been married for 33 years. It's something that would break a person. So
Yeah.
if you add on those other things, and what if she is one of the people that's at the place where Kylo did go through and slaughter people, or the Knights of Ren slaughter, whatever, that would break a man. It just would. And then you add those other things on top of it. So yeah, look, we all talk about it. We're all trying to retrofit. I love it because we're so deep into the weeds here. I won't keep you guys much longer. Go ahead.
It blew my mind there, because who is it that killed? Whose son was it that killed Darth Caedus? Wasn't it? So he was Han Solo's son in the New Jedi Order. Yeah. So
not Ben, Jaden,
Anakin was
Jason
Anakin.
and Jaina.
Jason and Jaina. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Jason killed Mara in the expanded universe.
So if it was Ben Solo in the canon universe, it's still Han Solo's kid, isn't it? So there's a logic to what you've just said without even thinking about it. So there's ways around it. There's definitely ways around it.
Had not even thought about that. That was man. Holy cow.
Story group.
Story group.
So we might just have to have our own podcast. Just call it Story Group.
Yeah.
Real quick before I let you get, I'm going to ask you guys each to bring a topic or something like that. But I will tell you, I'm not a Lego guy. Aaron, I know you've probably seen this. My wife, because of my love for Captain Rex, she got me the Captain Rex helmet one. So she and I have been day by day putting a few pieces on. I am loving it. I can't wait till it's done. I can't wait to have it on the shelf right behind me. It's a lot of fun. And now that I see it, I can see where everybody gets so addicted to them. They're a lot of fun and they look great. So just had to throw that in there, Joe's little personal time. But what any thoughts you guys want to hit before we leave? Like things you want to cover that we didn't cover, or anything you're working on, or anything? I know you're planning, Mark, the trip to Japan, but other things you're working on, other things you're excited about, other topic you want to hit before we break away.
Nothing I can think of. You know me, I'll talk about anything. I mean, there's always stuff going on with Fantha in the pods and events and so on and so forth. So it's looking like a busy year. It's nice, like you said, it's busy in one sense and maybe not as busy as we'd like in another. And some weeks are madcap crazy. The Kathleen Kennedy week the other day, you know, when she was saying all the stuff, she's just all the offshoots of that. I was like, how are we going to keep up with all of this? You know, and then the following week felt like dead as a dodo. So it's so like this at the moment. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And Japan's the focus at the moment, trying to get that all organised, make that happen, and just make sure we have a good time. But yeah, I think once we get, where are we? 2 days beyond Japan, we'll still be in Japan, and Andor's going to land with 3 episodes. That's when it really goes crazy. So Japan is great, and it's going to be amazing. But once that Andor thing's out, it's going to go nuts. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Cool. Aaron, how about you?
Yeah, so the other day they made an announcement that I was an avid player of Star Wars Hunters. I actually enjoyed it. I was probably I must be one of the few that played it since they announced that they're canceling it. But it was a great mobile game. I mean, I love it. It's great if I want to kill 5 minutes, if I want to kill 30 minutes. It's a fun interactive game. But on the flip side of that, at the same time, they announced a new tactics turn-based game coming out, and I think they're going to talk more about that at Celebration, and so I'm looking forward to learning more about that.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
I'm rubbish at games, but I'm ready to give it a go. So
whether it's Brent's Star Wars Legion, which I don't have the patience for, even though the thing looks beautiful, or whether it's video games, which I have no talent for. I am an observer of all those things, and I think they're all really cool. But yeah, for me, I'm a hyper energy guy, so even doing an hour-long podcast, I'm thinking about bouncing around and what I'm doing next already. So those two things just don't work with me, but I love it because Alfie is in his Star Wars game pretty much daily.
Galaxy of Heroes, yeah.
Galaxy of Heroes. I guess I just have adult ADD because I can't focus on any of that stuff.
Well, that was the nice thing about Hunters was you could just log in, play one fight, 5 minutes, you're done, and you move on with your day. And that was what I enjoyed about it. And it was, it was great. You got 15 minutes to kill, load it up, play it for a few minutes, and you're on your way. Galaxy of Heroes, which I do as well. That's my sip my coffee in the morning and update my characters, and then I move on with my day. And yeah, and I don't know. I never did play Jedi Survivor or any of that because, like you, I don't have the time to sit down. And I'm not as good at video games as I used to be. So, my reflexes are not as fast. So I can't play Battlefront 2 or anything like that. But Hunters was perfect because I could keep up with that one. Gotcha. And so that was really half the reason I played was because I could play it. So
I'm going to ask you guys each one question. You can make it short if you want because we're going to get Mark out of here. One question. If you were able to walk up at the celebration coming up in Japan, it doesn't have to be animated, live action, movie, Disney Plus, or animated, whatever like that. Is there one project that you would say, "Hey, I'm announcing this. This is what we're going to do next"? Is there one thing that either one of you would do?
I would like to see an animated series showing how Darth Maul took over Crimson Dawn. So I'd like to see a Maul Crimson Dawn series.
Nice. Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
You can fold in Solo, you can fold in Kira, fold in Lando, anybody you want. It's that era. The whole Jordan Voss thing, I think it'd be fascinating.
I love that one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. How about you, Aaron?
So I kind of touched on it earlier, which is I'd love to see them develop an Adelphi Ranger series. And if you want to make it fun and campy, kind of like I don't know if you guys remember Baba Black Sheep, which was an old World War II.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Black Sheep Squadron, where it was kind of mission of the week, and it was fun. It was a little campy. kind of that skeleton crew type vibe.
Nice.
And but you could have some serious, story threads weaved throughout to give the characters development and stuff like that. But I'd like to see something like that.
Okay, good. I always talk about it on my show. I'm Captain America. I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm the guy who is this true moral compass kind of follower, and I want the heroes to win, all that kind of stuff. But honestly, if I had my druthers, if I could do one, I would say, can we take the Darth Bane trilogy and make them into a trilogy of movies? Because that gets you that dark, evil Sith, all that stuff, and it doesn't have to tie to any of this stuff that's going on right now. And I never thought I would say that, but I've reread those books now a few times, and man, I just think it would be so much fun, and the cosplay and everything that could go along with it. It would be fantastic. So.
Well, I have a feeling you might get that itch scratched in Andor season 2, because my gut's telling me Luthen is going to do something where it is going to be so evil that it's definitely going to put. No, I think so. And actually, now that I think about it, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that instigates the Gorman massacre and really throws a wedge between him and Mon Mothma, and then she finally breaks free to become the strong, independent leader of the rebellion, because his act is so heinous that I could totally see Luthen's character doing something like that. So my gut's telling me you're going to get that itch scratched in Andor season 2.
And wouldn't it be a twist if Luthen did what you said and goes too far? And we know Cassian has been sent out on hit missions before. Wouldn't it be a twist if Cassian's the one that takes him out?
Yeah, that would be good. Look, guys, I was already juiced up and ready to go for season 2, but now you guys are even pushing the buttons more. So
story group,
yeah,
story group. That's
story group.
We're wearing story group t-shirts next time, so
that's right.
Title of the show: Rule the Galaxy Story Group. Yeah, that's great. Well, guys, thank you again. I know we just wanted to keep it short. Got some things we have to go and do, and I'm taking you away from your home time. So thank you, Mark. Where's the best place for everybody to follow you, get in touch with you, all that kind of stuff?
Oh, just head to fanthatracks.com. You can find me on there, or any of the socials at Fanthatracks, or if you want to find me, not that you would, but if you do, prefect_timing on, I think that's on X, on Instagram, and on Threads.
Okay. Aaron, how about you?
Yeah, you can find us on all the major socials, Hyperspace Heroes Podcast or Brown Squadron. A lot of our handles are Brown Squadron. We do weekly live streams Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. So head on over to our YouTube and click and subscribe and the bell and all that notification stuff. And that's probably the best way to find us.
You got it. And Mr. Mark, you're going to have to tell Mr. Mulcaster, now that I've got my plans laid out for Italy, since he's going, we got to plan a meetup for he and I to sit there and have a coffee in Rome or something like that. So
he would love that. Yeah, I'll tell him.
Yes. But guys, thank you both so very much. Can't wait to see you soon, Aaron. I know our paths will cross very soon. And Mark, we're just going to keep our nose to the grindstone until we meet up and hang out. So thank you both. Thank you to our followers. Thank you to our listeners. Again, check us out on YouTube at Rule the Galaxy, and email me at rulethegalaxysw@gmail.com. And until next time, may the Force be with you.